Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Laura Humphreys. Laura is an agency growth expert and former owner of a $15 million agency that she successfully sold to Ogilvy. Laura knows firsthand what it takes to scale an agency, from the early struggles to building a high-performing team and ultimately making a profitable exit. And she now helps ambitious agency owners implement the same strategies that fueled her success. I wanted to bring her on because so many agency founders hit growth plateaus, right? Whether at 1 million, 3 million, or beyond. She's been through all of it and is here to share what actually works and what doesn't. In this episode, we discuss the biggest myth about running a $15 million agency, the key leadership shifts agency owners need to scale, the right time to start thinking about an exit strategy, and more. No one was asking for another community, but I've made one anyway. So what's different? The dynamic agency community is designed around access rather than content. Access to peers who've done it before. Access to experts who've designed solutions. Access to resources that have been battle tested. Right now, the price for founding members is only $97 a year. Join today so your agency has immediate access to everything you need to grow. You can join at dynamicagency.community. And now, Laura Humphreys. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. What's the biggest myth about running a $15 million agency?
Well, I think the myth is that it's going to be too hard to have a bigger agency, assuming that you're a small independent agency, which is really kind of my sweet spot. It's going to be hard when you get to a bigger agency, because you're going to have a bigger team. You're going to have, everything's much more complicated and much harder. To me, my experience of when I got to that level, to the 15 million mark, it was actually easier. It was the best time that I had as an agency owner was there, because I had a leadership team. And I had a self-managing company. And for me, that's the goal to get to. The hardest part is not, if you do it right, the hardest part isn't having the bigger agency or having a $15 million agency. And that's still quite a small agency on the scale of things, obviously. The hardest part is the 1 to 3 million sort of part. That's for me. We got stuck there 1.5 million for a few years, and we couldn't get beyond that. And that's the hardest part, because the owner is still, the agency owner is still acting as an owner operator. I mean, this stuff, Chris. It's hard, because you've got to actually, at that point, to get from 1.5 say to 5 million, you've actually got to change what you're doing. You can get to 1 million relatively organically, and just by doing what you're good at and getting some clients on board and getting a small team. Right. That's not the hard part. The hard part is, what do you have to do strategically? And, you have to actually, I always say to agency owners, you've got to put your big girl or boy pants on and actually start thinking like a CEO, not an owner operator. And that's, so that to me is the real crux of it, is not what it's like when you get there. It's actually what you have to do here and now to enable that to be a self-managing company when you get there.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely something to that mindset shift that every agency owner needs. Right. I have a client right now who started with almost nothing, like negligible MRR, and within 7 months broke the $1 million mark for ARR. And he had a couple contractors, but it was really just him doing it and like setting everything up. But now it's like the growth started to slow, and it's like, well, how do I do this? Well, it's like, you can't be the one doing everything, right? And so now he's bringing on some other team members, and like everything just picked right back up. And it's like, oh, look at that! You like pass off some responsibilities, and now everything starts to flow again. It's just crazy how that little shift.
Absolutely. It's you've nailed it on the head. Of course, is you can't get there doing it by yourself, and you have to shift from being an owner operator mindset to a CEO mindset, which is all about, then it becomes about what kind of clients do we actually want? What is it that we're taking to market, which is, I know, is one of your kind of specialties. And then how do I actually organize a team of 8 players that are actually going to be able to deliver that?
Right.
So, yeah.
So this is probably the best time then to shift into talking about the agency flywheel. Can you give like a once over on the concept, and then we can dive into it?
Yeah, well, it is a good point. It is a good time to shift into it because it's exactly aimed at that stuck at the 1 million, 2 million, between 1 to 3 million. And it's really the idea is that from my experience, we got stuck there and then we did these things and we worked at them. And then in 1 year, we won 4 major clients, like big clients in 1 year, and then we took off. So it kind of like our growth kind of went like sort of, to 1 million, and then it stayed flat, and then it took off from there. And so the flywheel is really about, the hamster wheel is when you're being the owner operator and you're doing all the work and you've got that constant chicken and egg, like I can't get out there to do enough sales because I'm back here looking after the clients, and I'm so busy looking after clients that the pipeline's dried up, and it's kind of this hamster wheel of just doing the motions, the Groundhog Day stuff. The flywheel is actually the 7 strategies, which is really the strategies you need to put in place, which starts with having a bigger goal, and then actually knowing what your offer is to market and who your ideal client is, and then building the right team for that model, for that offer, building the A team that's going to do that, and then having a sales system that's going to really target that ideal client, and a client growth system that's going to enable you to actually grow those clients and nurture them. And then bringing it back to the operational stuff, which how do you measure what matters? How do you actually measure what you're doing in 12-month and 90-day increments so that you can actually move everything forward? So that, in a nutshell, is the flywheel.
So what I appreciate the most about it is that you start with a vision. And obviously people are going to say like, yeah, well, of course you start with a vision, right? But I've talked to so many agencies, even like coaches who want to get into like the other, like the sexy stuff, right? Like well, this is how we go to market. This is how we build the offer. But it's like, but if we don't know where we're actually going and how we're mapping this out, then does any of that even matter? I'm assuming you see the same things.
Oh, exactly. That's why I start with. And, I know you're going to ask me, what my book is for agency owners, but I'm going to tell you in advance. It's 10 times as easy than 2 times because it starts with a bigger goal. It starts with, and to be a CEO, to be a leader, you've got to have a vision, and it's what are we actually building here? Because if you're just looking at, what are we doing? We want to sort of increase revenues and profits next year, then you can keep most of the stuff that you're doing and move incrementally. But if you really want to scale, you've actually got to be very clear. What are we building, and who are the clients that we need when that picture is complete? And what's the team that we need? And what is the goal that we've got that's going to excite everybody? So as I bring on board these A players, they're going to be really excited about doing this with me. Because the A players, the real high performance people, are motivated by goals, and so, they want to come on board and be part of a team that's actually doing something exciting. So it's critical, Chris. It's just, it has to start there. Yeah.
Well, even just from, so I call it agency design, right? Like, let's actually build the agency that you want, but we got to know how to get there first. But I have 2 clients who are about the same age, and one said, give me 60 plus hours of work a week. Like, I want to do this all now so that when I have a family later, I can just focus on my family. Versus the other client who said, like, I want to kind of enjoy my 20s and go explore and like do these things. And so the agencies look completely different for both of these, even though you're right, we're doing the same work. It's just completely structured differently, which I think brings a lot more like joy to what you're actually doing.
Yeah, and that's which is another point that's really important that you just said there that you do with your clients is what is in it for you? What's your why? Because that's the thing that's going to get you up when it gets tough, right? And you just want to stay in bed and pull the covers over you. I used to say I was jealous of the girl at the checkout counter, because I was so stressed. I was awake all night. I was worrying about paying the bills, and I was standing there in the grocery line, and she's just going boop, boop, boop. And I'm going, God, I wish, she's going to go home and she's not going to think about work at all. And, and I was just that stressed. But what kept me going is that I had a vision or a goal, if you like, right from the start to build and sell my agency to a multinational, like right from the start. And that's not everybody's goal, but that was my goal. And so in the middle, it got really, really tough. But I was having panic attacks, and that was what forced me to actually put my big girl pants on and become a CEO, not an owner operator. And I don't wish that on anybody else. It's just partly why I do this work, right? Because you don't need to get to a nervous breakdown to actually build your agency properly. It's for me. So that was my goal. That's what motivated me. So I built my agency in a very specific way because I knew that if I was going to sell it to a multinational, I knew what kind of sale price I wanted, and I knew that meant that I had to be at this level of revenues and billings, and I need these kind of clients. And so I had a really clear picture, and that was what motivated me. And as you say, not everybody wants to build their agency to sell it. Although my belief on it is that if you build an agency that's valuable enough that someone would buy it, then by default you've built a great agency, even if you don't want to sell it. Even if your vision is to actually create that self-managing agency that you can have choice. So regardless of whether you want to sell it or not, I believe every agency owner should have a goal to create a self-managing agency.
One of the pieces of advice I'd gotten years ago was get a third party every so often, every couple of years, 3 years, to come in and just evaluate your business and just look at it and tell you, because if they can put a price tag on your business, they can also tell you where those shortcomings are. And so you get like a third party to really come give you an evaluation of like, here are all the things you need to work on. And and it gives you a better idea for how you can actually grow your business or like what you need to tighten up without being like inside trying to figure it out.
I think that's really smart. Yeah. I didn't do that, but one thing I did do at the end of the second year of business, I brought in 2 independent directors.
Yep.
Which back in at that time, I paid them $1,000 each a month. Which is I wouldn't get them for that today, but it was still $24,000 off my bottom line, which was massive for me at that time. But it was what I did. I had one advisor who was an ex Saatchi's ad man, and he was really flamboyant, retired, and he knew the ad scene. And the other guy was a real staunch left brain businessman, and it was the most hilarious. Our board meetings were hilarious because they couldn't be any more different. But this is why I believe all agencies should have external advice in some form or other. Because having those 2 guys, they were constantly evaluating, and questioning me and pushing me to, not only achieve our goals, but they knew where I wanted to take the agency eventually, and so I had this constant sort of accountability and support, and I think that is absolutely critical. I've built a couple of successful businesses which I've exited from, and I've always had external advice. Advisors, directors, mentors, whatever, I think that's another key criteria really for an agency. Don't do it on your own. Like it just doesn't make any sense to try and do it on your own. And bring in the best advisors for the different things that you need, you probably need a generalist who's been there, done that, who can actually, has been through the roller coaster and really gets it. But you also need some specialists that have got particular areas of expertise for the next move that you need to make.
Right. You're never going to be able to see all your blind spots. So it's like, let's bring these people in who can help. One of the metaphors I love is like he with the biggest support team will win, essentially, right? Like you look at like in the NBA or something, like LeBron James that has so many. He has like an athletic trainer, a physical trainer, a coach. He has multiple other coaches. He's got a massage therapist. He has a water boy. Like literally everyone there just to help him focus on what he does. And so if we can actually set ourselves up to have that support network, like we're set, right? Like
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, it doesn't make any sense. I kind of use sports analogies all the time because, it's the same thing. Like they have a united goal, right? And he's on a team that has 8 players, and they have strategies, and they have a coach, and they all know where they're going, and they know how to measure whether the strategies are working or not. And so the analogy just works, and I think it's Even golf I find is funny, even though golf is, not typically a team sport, it's still something that you can go out and play golf. Anyone can go and get some clubs and a ball and go on a golf course, and you can thrash around and you can get from the tee to the green, and you can even put it in the hole, but it's going to take you 24 shots and you're going to spend, an hour doing it because you're in the rough. Or you can go and talk to a pro and get some lessons and, have them go out on the course with you and show you how to do it. And over time you get to be proficient and you get to actually know how to do the strategies and you get to play a more strategic game. I haven't really got there myself, but that's, I'm still playing a pretty unstrategic game, but it's the same thing, right? Anyone can start an agency, and apparently there are 53% more agencies in the world now than there were pre-pandemic.
Right.
So anyone can start an agency, and anyone can get it to $1 million revenue, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they've got a really well crafted, strategic, well organized entity that they've created, and so that at that point is where, if you don't know how to do it yourself, and the only way you're going to know how to do it yourself is if you've done it before, you're going to need to get some help.
Right.
The other thing is another book that I've got. I'm just such a massive reader, Chris, but another book by the same author, actually, Who Not How.
Another good one.
Yeah, it's exactly that, right? It's like you can set a big goal, but you really need to then work out who are the who's you need in your world that are going to help you get there.
Right.
And so, and that's, I guess that's why you and I do what we do, right? Because we share a passion to see agencies thrive. It's easy to fail as an agency owner, and I don't know, a failure doesn't necessarily mean that you close your doors, but it means that if you're stressed out, you have no quality of life, you're not paying yourself enough, you're not making, you don't have great clients, then, that's, to me, that's kind of a failure to provide a lifestyle for yourself.
Yeah.
And the whole who not how is get there faster, man.
Right, you can move very fast just by saying who could get me through. I've been doing it with every decision now. It's just who, because very rarely are decisions based on kind of time constrained. And in that sense, like if I had more time, I could decide. It's like, no, really, you need more information and then you could decide. And so my question is now, okay, well, what information do I need to make this decision easy? And just asking that question usually points me to a person that's like, oh, they have the information. If I go talk to them, I can figure this out fast. And it's like decisions get made faster and you start executing faster, and becomes another flywheel.
Absolutely. That's exactly how it works. So, and it's, and it's really nice to be at a point in my life where I have done it a few times successfully, and it's never been an easy journey. Owning a business, owning an agency. I think we're nuts. Quite frankly, it's like, why would you? Because it's a massive roller coaster of highs and lows, and so It's nice to be at a point in my life where I am able to say, hey, look, I did do it, and I have got an amazing lifestyle, and I've created this. But it wasn't easy, and I can share this. I can share the story, and I can share the lessons, and that's where coming back to that's where the flywheel comes into it. Really, it's like it's not rocket science. It is business fundamentals. Agency owners. It's not. It's if you start an agency because you're particularly good at some aspect of agency life, you're a creative person, or you're a marketing person, or you start it because you've got those skills. You need to understand the fundamentals of business applied specifically to agency life, and then you can actually grow faster. Yeah.
Where do you see kind of the biggest hangups or bottlenecks for an agency that's trying to scale?
Pretty much the owner operator mentality. Because while the owner, I've got a diagram that I talk about, which is it's a triangle, and it's the problem solving capabilities of your agency. And at the bottom, you've got level one is people doing the work, and how far and what kind of problems are they solving, and how far out are those problems that they're solving. And typically, they're solving the problem of getting the work to the client in some form or other, and they're thinking as far out as that is delivered. Right. So they're never thinking more than 2 to 3 months out. If they're kind of lurching from project to project or whatever. Then you get up to sort of team leaders who are thinking a bit further out, and they're solving the problems of how do I get my team to deliver and perform. And as it goes up, you get to your sort of general managers, and who are operationally looking across the whole organization, looking at the profit and loss, and kind of they're looking further out again, because they're going where do we need to be in the next year and the year after to make this happen. And then you've got level 5 or 6, which is your CEO, sort of heading up towards your CEO level, and they need to be thinking 5 years out, 10 years out, like where are we going, and what are the trends, what's happening in our industry, what's happening competitively, what markets do we need to be playing in, how do we actually win this game that's at a much more strategic level, and so if the owner is the best problem solving brain in the agency, which it typically would be, and they're spending too much time down at sometimes down at level 1, it's certainly not much higher than level 2 or 3, then they're compressing, and you just won't grow. And it's just, to me, it's like, that's it. Yeah. And I've got a saying, if you don't let go, you'll never grow. So, this was where I had those nervous breakdowns, and we're like panic attacks that kind of, almost a nervous breakdown. My doctor sent me on a 6-month sabbatical at that point, because I went to a hypnotist to try and cure me of panic attacks. I mean, they were awful. I was in meetings and I'd be doing a pitch, and then it was almost like I had an out-of-body experience, and I would just stand there and I had no memory. I couldn't remember what I was supposed to be talking about. And I was just looking at all these people looking at me open-mouthed, going, I don't know what to say. And it was embarrassing for me. It was embarrassing for my team. It was awful. So I went to a hypnotist, and he told me that basically I was massively stressed. You should go see your doctor. I'm not going to hypnotize you out of this. And my doctor said, you need to take a break. So I went 6 weeks off the grid, no contact, left my general manager in charge, and I came back after 6 weeks, nearly 2 months, and the agency had the best 2 months ever. Everybody had stepped up. Everyone was so relieved that I'd left. It was like, because I had too many fingers in too many pies, and I was controlling too much. So I had to. That's how bad I had to get before I let go. Right. And after that, that's when we really took off, and I actually let people step up so that I could spend my time not doing any of that stuff, and not trying to quality control things, and trusting that the team could do what I needed them to do, and making sure that we had the right systems and the right training in place. And that's probably a critical piece, right? Is what do you need as an owner to feel safe to let go, to feel that trust? And if you haven't set it in place, if you haven't hired the right people, if you haven't put the systems in place, you haven't put the training in place, then it's on you, because you haven't allowed your team to be trustworthy. And that's on you as a leader. So it all comes back to that piece, really. It's that you've got to step up as a leader.
Yep. Is there like a specific second hire for like the leadership team, like to, I guess, and I'm framing this question poorly. When you agency's finally owner realizes I need to bring someone else in to help me with all of this, is there like a consistent theme that you see for like what position they're hiring for? Is it usually a COO type? Is it a general manager? Are they bringing someone in just to like manage their weak spot? Maybe they're terrible at finances, so they're like, let me get a CFO to just do that side.
Yeah.
Like, what are you noticing?
Yeah, well, my own experience was that it was a general manager who happened to be a qualified chartered accountant. And actually, I didn't actually hire her deliberately. I brought her in to sort out our finances, because I realized that was a weak spot. Like I just, we were doing okay, and there was money in the bank, and we were, but I wasn't getting regular reporting. I wasn't, and I kind of realized that I needed to. That was a critical piece that needed to be improved. So I brought her in in the first place to sort that out. And she said to me when she came in, I'll do that within 6 months. I'll have made myself redundant. And she did. She set it all up brilliantly. But then she started moving on to everything else. She started going through all of, like all of our other systems and our operations and our invoicing, and she just started systemizing everything to the point where I went, you're actually, this, how this operates better than I do. So I said, I think you basically need to run the operational side of the business. And so I said, right, promoted her to general manager, and it was the best thing I ever did. She was like because that enabled me to be good at what I was good at, which was, I'm a visionary. I'm a kind of ideas person. I started out as a copywriter, so I'm a creative person. I just wanted to be, let's do the next bright shiny thing. And she was my kind of, well, let's do a business case for that, and let's see, let me, you tell me what you want to do, and I'll tell you the pros and cons, and what it's going to cost us, and what the investment is, and whether it's worth doing. And then she banned me from hiring or firing anybody. Because I was hopeless at that. I was just, our real A team started to really come together after she started taking over the hiring, and just said, let me do the people management. And everyone in the agency used to call her Auntie, because she was just, everyone would go to her with their problems, and which was great, because then she would tell me their problems, and, and then I would know. And she would say to me, like, Laura, you need to go and put a note on so-and-so's desk, because they're not feeling the love from you. They feel like you haven't noticed them. I'm going, oh, it's ridiculous. Of course I've noticed them. She goes, just go and put a note on their desk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like I had this guide within the agency that was telling me, this is the pulse of the agency. It's what's happening. And so she was the first, she was like my 2IC, my kind of, she ran the business operationally, and I was the one that was out there, and that, enabling us to kind of go after those bigger clients. And then the next two senior hires were creative director, and because we were a strategic creative agency, so a creative director and a client services director. And so when it got to that point, just before I sold it, that was the management team that I had in place, the leadership team. And it was just, so I only had those three reporting to me, and I, got to the stage where I was doing a 4-day week, and, could go and get my nails done, and, do all that, learn to play golf and all that stuff, because I had an amazing leadership team. And that's when that's the self-managing company, right? I had 3 people reporting to me. They were all very competent. We moved offices into massive offices. I didn't have anything to do with it, like they just did everything, it was just, and when Ogilvy did eventually come knocking on the door, because we'd won some big accounts, we won Agency of the Year. We kind of got noticed. They came knocking on the door, and they could confidently see they wanted our clients. And then they'd say, who's looking after those clients? And I said, well, these guys. And then they could see that they could easily take me out, put someone else in top, and it would, they wouldn't lose the clients, because that's really what they wanted. Mm-hmm. They wanted the clients, and they wanted the team that was going to deliver those clients. And then it was, for them, that was a no-brainer. And we had a really very, very tightly run operation because of Angela, my GM. She, when they first bought, they bought 30% first, and then I had the option to sell the other 70% after 3 years. The reason I did that is that we just won 3 really big clients when they came knocking, and I said, a multiple of EBIT, right? And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to sell it now. These clients are on 2-3 year contracts. We are going to be worth 4 times as much in 3 years' time. So they said, well, look, we'll buy 30% now at a higher multiple, and then we'll buy the other 70% after 3 years at the multiple that we'd agreed. So, which was a great deal for me, because I had a buyer in the bank. But at that point, they put a director onto they insisted that they put a director on, and we had to have a board meeting every month. And this guy would come from Ogilvy, and he'd come in his suit, and kind of, and Angela would prepare our papers, and he'd sit down, and and he was looking for where he could pick holes in what we were doing, but there wasn't any. And after I think he came to about 4 of these meetings, and then he said, oh, look, I need to do this every month, because he couldn't find anything wrong with what we were doing. And that was all Angela, right? That was all her. She was just so good at that operational stuff. And I was keeping us on track, and the client services director was keeping the clients happy, and we were meeting our targets. And it was just, so he stopped coming. Then it was like, oh, we'll just have one every 6 months, or just send me the papers, like it's, and that's to me, that's the dream, like that's the dream for every agency owner is, it's a long answer to your question, but that person that can run your business operationally is was actually the key for me.
Yeah, I think the latter half of that was insightful too, just because most agencies haven't sold yet. And so to just understand what that process could look like is super valuable.
Yeah.
So I have 2 more questions for you as we wind down, which you've already kind of shown shown your cards on this first one. I was going to ask, what book do you recommend every agency owner should read? So I'll let you re-show that.
So the book is 10 Times is Easier Than 2 Times by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. Reason being is you need to motivate a high-performing team if you're going to get anywhere. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself, and you're not going to be able to do it with a team of average people. High-performance culture is absolutely critical to getting past that stuck point 1 to 3 million. Absolutely critical. And a high-performing team, a high-performing person is motivated by a bigger goal. And the whole idea of 10 times is easier than 2 times is that a 10 times goal makes you have to look into the future, and you have to imagine how it could look. What would 10 times actually look like? You're not saying you have to actually get there, but in order to have a look at what it looked like, you have to change 80% of what you're doing right now. And for most owner-operators that are still very much involved in the business, it's really critical, because that 80% is probably the 80% of stuff you shouldn't be doing. And if you keep a 2 times goal, you keep moving incrementally, you'll just keep doing more of what you're doing, which is probably what you shouldn't be doing. So the idea of the 10 times goal is, and I get everyone in my program, when we start the flywheel with the 10 times goal and the vision and the BHAG, is what do you have to let go of in order for that to be possible? And then right from the day one, from when we kick off, we get a list of what they need to let go of. And they're very committed to it because they've put it out there, and the other thing I do is the big, hairy, audacious goal, which is what's the goal that's not financial, but that's going to really motivate your team. I mean, we wanted to win Agency of the Year. We wanted to be the country's premier boutique agency. So at the time when we were setting these goals, we were just a small team. Just a handful of us struggling to get more clients. And so when we brought people on board, we're a team that's going to this big goal. And what can you bring to the team that's going to help us get there? Which is a whole different conversation to we're hiring an account manager or a digital marketer or whatever. It's like that's just hiring someone to do a job. If you sit them down and go, this is where we're going, does that excite you? Yes. And what can you do? Like, you've got a unique ability. What are you going to do, and how's it going to help us get there? And then what's your goal within that goal so that we can help you achieve your goals? That is just a whole different way of hiring. And it makes, I've had some pretty bad hires. I know how painful it is. I've had a lot of emotional stress and cost a lot of money by hiring the wrong people. So, I mean, coming back to 10 times, all of that is because if you set that bigger goal, it changes the way you behave. It changes the way you look at your agency, and it makes you get out of being level 2 or 1. It makes you have, the first thing you have to do is let go of that.
Right. Yeah, definitely requires a lot more focus to be able to hit the 10X. And so, last question, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and your programs?
Best place is on LinkedIn. It's Laura Humphreys at LinkedIn. I'm there quite often sharing my tips and stories about, my journey, the highs and the lows. Sometimes I might share a story that's quite personal about, what it was like to have panic attacks. But I'm also sharing, the as many of the kind of things that I did well that can help as well. So that's probably just the best place to come and hang out with me there. And then if there's something that I'm saying that's of interest and you want to kind of talk to me, then we can do that.
Awesome. All right, Laura, thanks for joining.
Thank you. It's been fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.